Would you rather go to Hawaii or Chernobyl? You probably answered Hawaii, unless you're a dark tourist. What is dark tourism? The term was coined in 1996 to describe the phenomenon of tourists vacationing in places associated with death and tragedy. While the term might be new, the practice has been around for centuries. The popularity of some TV shows like HBO's Chernobyl has boosted interest in dark tourism. Let's go over the words in italics. Coined. Coined. To invent a new word or phrase or be the first to use it. For example, the term dark tourism was first coined in 1996 by Scottish professors John Lennon, no, not the Beatles singer, and his colleague Malcolm Foley. Phenomenon, or also pronounced phenomenon, something that exists and can be seen, usually something unusual or interesting. For example, dark tourism is not a recent phenomenon. Boosted. Boosted. To improve or increase something. For example, HBO's Chernobyl has boosted interest in dark tourism. Let's practice what we've learned. Fill in the blanks with one of these words: coined, phenomenon, or boosted. Global warming is widely believed to have been coined in 1975 by geochemist Wallace Broecker. Most scientists who study global warming believe this phenomenon is attributed in part to human activity. The Green Party of Canada would like to boost funding for water infrastructure. Well done. Let's move on. There are different types of dark tourism. We will go over each of these. Disaster tourism, war tourism, banditry tourism, macabre and supernatural, necro tourism. A disaster, or catastrophe, is a sudden event that causes great damage or loss of life. A disaster can be either man-made, caused by man, or it can have natural causes. For example, a wildfire, also called a forest fire or bushfire in Australia, can be caused by an unattended campfire. This would be a man-made wildfire. Lightning can also cause a wildfire. In this case, the wildfire would be due to natural causes. A war is an armed conflict. There are many different types of war, but I won't go into too much detail. Wars can be categorized into two groups: civil wars and international wars. A civil war is a war within a single state. The American Civil War was a conflict between the North and Confederate South. In the Anglophone world, when we talk about world wars, we are usually referring to either World War I, that ended in 1918, also called the Great War, or World War II, that ended in 1945 when the Allies defeated Nazi Germany and Japan. Banditry refers to acts of robbery and violence. People who commit such crimes are called bandits. The word bandit actually comes from the Italian word bandito, which means outlaw. Bandit, outlaw, criminal are all very similar words. Famous bandits include the notorious Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar is notorious because he is famous for being bad. Pablo Escobar was a Colombian drug lord. His story has been popularized by the Netflix series Narcos. A person from Colombia is Colombian. Non-native speakers often get countries and nationalities or adjectives mixed up. I am Canadian. I am from Canada. I like Korean food. I have never visited Korea. Another notorious bandit is Al Capone. Do you remember what notorious means? A notorious person is famous for doing bad things. Another word for notorious is infamous. Al Capone was infamous during the Prohibition era, a period during the 1920s in the States when alcohol was banned, illegal, or prohibited. Al Capone was a gangster, which means he was part of a gang, an organized group of criminals. His crimes include gambling, robbery, bootlegging, and murder, to name a few. Al Capone amassed a fortune bootlegging illegal booze. Booze is slang for alcohol. Bootlegging is the manufacturing, distribution, or selling of illegal products, which is exactly what Al Capone and his gang did during the Prohibition era. Macabre is used to describe something disturbing and horrifying and relating to death or violence. Similar words include morbid, gory, and gruesome. Supernatural is used to describe a force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature. Similar words include paranormal, mystical, and ghostly. Necrotourism. The prefix necro means the dead or corpse, which is a dead body. Necrotourism, as you may have guessed, is the act of visiting cemeteries. Let's practice what we've learned so far. Chernobyl was a nuclear The answer is B, disaster. The American War was a conflict between the North and South. The answer is A, civil. The American Civil War. Which of these are examples of man-made disasters? The answer is A, wildfires caused by cigarette butts. Which of these words can be used to describe Pablo Escobar? The answer is C, both notorious and infamous. Which pair of sentences is correct? The answer is C. He is Korean. He moved here from Korea. Which of these words mean bandit? The answer is B, outlaw. Which of these words is the opposite of prohibited? The answer is C, permitted, which means allowed, authorized, legal. Al Capone made a fortune doing what with alcohol? The answer is A, bootlegging. The crime scene was very The answer is C, macabre. Here are some popular sites for dark tourism. Chernobyl. The Chernobyl disaster was a nuclear accident that occurred on the 26th of April, 1986 at the number 4 reactor in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the city of Pripyat. At the time, it was the greatest nuclear disaster the world has ever known. The entire city of Pripyat was evacuated. This means the entire population was removed. All people had to leave their home and belongings and were never allowed to return. The result is that Pripyat became a ghost town, meaning it was abandoned. Nobody lived there anymore. Despite high levels of radiation and risk of contamination, Chernobyl has become an official tourist attraction. Auschwitz. Contrary to popular belief, Auschwitz was not a single concentration camp, but a complex of over 40 concentration and extermination camps operated by Nazi Germany and occupied Poland during the Second World War and the Holocaust. I wished we didn't call these torture chambers camps. A camp usually has a positive meaning in the English language. The first thing that comes to my mind is setting up a campsite in the outdoors or going to a summer camp. A camp is where some parents send their children to have fun in the nature during the summer holidays. Oftentimes, a camp offers a program to a specific recreational or educational activity. Examples of such camps include band camp, math camp, or even soccer camp. The 9/11 Museum. On September 11, 2001, the terrorist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 planes and carried out suicide attacks. 2 of these planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Almost 3,000 people were killed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. There is a long list of global impacts of 9/11, and the Western world agrees it is one of the most devastating events in modern history. The 9/11 Museum tells the story of 9/11 through artifacts, imagery, and more. There's even a gift shop. It has attracted many visitors, but survivors of the attacks have criticized the museum for commercializing 9/11. Pompeii is perhaps the world's first dark tourism hotspot. Pompeii was an ancient city located near Naples. In the year 79, a nearby volcano, Mount Vesuvius, erupted, covering the city in ash and volcanic debris. For many centuries, Pompeii remained buried beneath a blanket of ash and pumice, which perfectly preserved the remains. In the 1700s, these were finally unearthed. Today, Pompeii is a famous archaeological site that provides important information of the ancient world. And it's also a famous tourist site where people marvel at the preserved bodies of dead people. You might be asking yourself, why would anyone want to visit such places? Some say it is no different than watching a horror movie. People want to experience horror because it's exciting. We are fascinated with death and tragedy. When we watch a murder story on the news, it can cause a spike in adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine. In other words, it creates excitement and gives you a sense of pleasure. Of course, not all people who visit the 9/11 Museum are seeking an adrenaline rush. Some people might visit the 9/11 Museum or Auschwitz for educational purposes. They want to feed their curiosity and get a better understanding of the tragic events. A large number of people feel empathy and wish to visit these tragic sites to pay their respects to the poor victims. So what do you think? Is dark tourism ethical? Ethical means moral, right, good. Should we charge people a fee to visit the 9/11 Museum and sell items relating to 9/11 at a gift shop? Is it acceptable to visit the grave of a celebrity you've never met? Should we be allowed to take selfies at Auschwitz? Is it not dangerous to allow tourists inside Chernobyl, knowing it still poses a health risk? Tell me, are there any dark tourist sites you would like to visit? Please share your thoughts in the comment section.